Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing something with gouache, which has quickly become one of my favorite mediums, I think, despite the fact that I've never really used it before the end of last year. I've learned a little bit about working with gouache, but I wouldn't say I really know enough to be like that good with it. But I enjoy it a lot. I like the workability of it. I like that I can kind of keep layering things and not really have to worry about, messing up too much. It's kind of relieving. I mean, it's not like you mess up too much with paint either. I mean, with paint, you just kind of cover it again. I don't know. Depends on how you're painting, I guess. There's a lot of variables, but I really like gouache. Today, I'm going to be using it to paint a scene from a Jack Stauber video from his HiLo teaser from a couple years back. I know that everybody's kind of hopped on the Jack Stauber bandwagon as of recently, but I found him right before he released Pop Food. I remember my friend Marlon was kind of showing me some of his videos, and I listened to Pop Food and was following him for a while, and then not too long after that he released HiLo, which was crazy. It was nice to jump in around a time where a lot of good music was getting released by him, you know? I'd say those two albums still really hold up. If you haven't heard HiLo or any of Pop Food, I would highly recommend it. I would just recommend Jack Stauber's channel in general. I mean, for anybody that hasn't watched him, his channel is like claymation mixed with some early computer animation with like, I guess what I could only call like, almost like MS Paint made out of a basement kind of 2D animation. It's really charming. It reminds me a lot of like finding VHS tapes at yard sales back in the day. But I mean, everybody kind of knows Jack Stauber at this point. He's gotten a lot of attention, which is good. I feel like he's gotten the amount of attention he deserves for all different subject matters he covers, not just medium wise, but song wise and whatnot. Just something about his style is very appealing. I very much like that thrift store kind of feeling. You guys know when you go to thrift stores, there's a couple different type of thrift stores. There's the thrift stores that are almost more just antique stores than anything. There's like the thrift stores that kind of feel like Goodwill, where everything's like a little modern, just like a couple years outdated. And then there's the thrift stores that are kind of in that sweet spot that I like, where you're finding kind of like old technology. There's all these old TVs all over the place, and microphones, and keyboards, and whatnot, and instruments. Instruments are great to find. And that was kind of the feeling I wanted to go with here. One where almost like every piece of technology is like wood paneled in some way. I guess that the actual place where he shot this was a store called Rossi's, from what I understand. I watched a video not too long ago about the song John and Nancy by him. I think they said the place was called Rossi's. It was like this big movie theater that went out of business and it got bought up. And now it's used almost like a flea market where people just open up stores in the little theater areas. But I like the idea of that. I think it's pretty unique, and I think it lends well to this kind of like painting that I wanted to go for. I don't know. I just like that. I wouldn't call it rustic, because it really wasn't too long ago, but like, there's like that kind of like 70s, late 70s aesthetic. Not even necessarily that. I mean, I do, but also that kind of feeling of like outdated technology piling up somewhere in a warehouse. It just feels nice. This was a piece that I'll admit, I kind of jumped into it and then almost immediately was just not really feeling it. Like I kept adding on colors, and I kept adding on different layers and whatnot, and it just wasn't quite what I had hoped. And I think this is a common thing. Here, one second, let me take a sip. But I think this is kind of a common thing with me, where I'll have like a idea for something, and it's really solidified in my mind. But then upon trying to do it, there's always that part of my brain that wants to shut it down. I should say that this used to be a problem. It's really not anymore. I've just learned that if it's an idea I want to finish, I can force myself to finish it, and I'll be happy with the result. But if it's something that's just not turning out quite right, I'm also fine with dropping it. You know, you got to pick your battles. At least that's how it is with me. Each project is different, you know. There's people that'll say that, like, once you start something, you gotta finish it. And there are people who say that if you're not comfortable with something, then don't finish it. But it's all up to the person, you know. It's a person by person basis. I think I found what works best for me is to start working on something, and if I don't like it after a little while, just give it like 5 more minutes. I'll give it like 5, maybe 10 more minutes of working on it. And by that point, I can tell. Because if by that 10-minute mark, I just am not feeling it still, if I'm feeling really discouraged, or not even discouraged, but just like, it's just not entertaining to me anymore, or I'm just not in a place I want it to be, then I know, and I can drop it. But if those 10 minutes go by, and I look over at the timer, and it's actually been about 20 or 30 minutes, then I know it's something worth continuing, and then I can really sink into my work, because I already have at that point. I guess I've been using a little bit of gouache lately, but for the most part, I think what I've been doing is drawing characters. I'd love to post some online. What did I do not too long ago? I've just been designing a lot of things. I've had a lot more fun with like characters lately than places, but I guess that's not really anything new. I just think that unless if the place I'm drawing is something I really have solidified in my mind, just it's not as interesting to me as people in general. But I mean, places can be characters in and of itself. That's what kind of drew me to this place, is the fact that there was so much personality in it. But I think in the instance of a place like this, it kind of stops being a place and becomes more of a character, and it's easier for me to sink into it, because instead of thinking about how things are physically placed, which I mean is still a part of it, but what I'm trying to say is instead of thinking about like how things are physically placed and the symmetry of things and whatnot, I can just sink into the idea of why a thing is the way it is. Why is this old TV beat up? Why are there scratches in the wall there? Why is there a corner missing from the ceiling up there? Why is one light bulb broken and the other one isn't, you know? And you start thinking of ideas in your mind, and before you know it, you're thinking of a backstory, and by that point, you're writing a character more than you're making an actual drawing of a room, regardless of what the room is. Could be a blank room, could be a white void, could be whatever it is, doesn't really matter. But I'd say I've been drawing characters lately. Here's a picture of Garfield I drew. I've been drawing Garfield a little bit. My friend Marlon actually told me that the eyes looked like Studio Ghibli, and that made me pretty happy. I like to hear that, because Studio Ghibli draws very good eyes. But at the time, I was just trying to draw cute Garfield, because we need more cute Garfield, you know? I think the internet is fixated on Abomination Garfield, but I feel like it's a bit of a bastardization of his face, you know? We wouldn't want to bastardize Garfield at all. Good Lord, no. No, but in all seriousness, I think that all the Garfield abominations are hilarious. If you ever get the chance, please watch the YouTube channel Lasagna Cat, because it's wonderful, man. If you like kind of like ARG type things, it's not really an ARG, but if you like that type of thing where things start out normal and then kind of develop a story over time, you would love Lasagna Cat, man. Once you get to the sex survey, you can kind of skip through it a little bit. But watch the full thing if you want to, you know. Maybe you already know about it. All I can say is that Lasagna Cat is really good. But as much as I like that stuff, I also like the cutesy stuff as well. There's a fan comic called John that it's just like 2 little comics that someone made, but it just kind of follows John Arbuckle, almost like from his perspective as he's doing things. And it's very sweet. It's not really comedic. It's got some funnier moments, but you just kind of get to watch John from his perspective on the world, and it's very weirdly like heartwarming. I don't know how else to explain it. It's unique. It's very unique. But Garfield is there. He's there. Don't worry about it, guys. Garfield's there. But I'd recommend that as well. I'll have to link that down below. Make sure you guys can read that. I'll try to link all this stuff. I'll make sure you can get to it. But I guess that kind of comes full circle with the Garfield thing, because when I think of thrift stores, I always think of Garfield. I don't know what it is, but you can go into any thrift store in North America and you are guaranteed to find some piece of Garfield something or another. Oh, did you hear that? It means the It means the dogs are awake. One of them's awake. Probably JR. He's probably running around out there. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. But yeah, I don't know what it is. So I always kind of associate thrift stores with Garfield. And I guess just Garfield with that kind of 1970s, 1980s era in general. Seems like those two things in particular were pretty big around the time that I was growing up, which is weird because I grew up in like early 2000s, you know? I'd say I think a lot of people around me kind of got to grow up in that sweet spot where we got a little bit of all the current cultures, you know? You had all this new stuff coming out with like iPods and whatnot, but oh man, I sound like a 70-year-old man just then talking about the iPods and whatnot, but you know what I mean. We came around the time where we were getting all kinds of new technology, and then like at the same time we were getting VHS tapes and things like that still coming out. I'm not trying to be that like nostalgic guy or the guy that's like the 90s were better, because I really don't think they were. I don't think the mid 2000s were better, you know. But I'm just saying that kind of gotta be in a time period there where it was like all these different eras had kind of converged. We still had things from the 70s and 80s and 90s because they had just come by, and then we were getting all this new stuff from the 2000s, and pretty soon it was the early 2010s, and we had all kinds of touchscreens, and I got my first iPod and things like that, you know. Time progresses, but I still had like cassette tapes. Did anybody actually like cassette tapes, man? I mean, I kind of did for a while there. I used them pretty often. We used to listen to like radio plays and stuff, like Adventures in Odyssey. Does anybody remember Adventures in Odyssey? I remember Adventures in Odyssey because there was like one episode of it. There was like a Dungeons and Dragons episode. Adventures in Odyssey, for anyone who doesn't know, was like a Christian program thing, and they had because they were a Christian program thing, they had to do like the no Dungeons and Dragons thing, like the D&D bad kind of thing. So there's one episode where a kid's cousin comes over to play D&D, and instead of it just being like D&D, like they're just like playing in the forest for a little while, and like that's all fine, they're like LARPing, and then it just suddenly out of nowhere, the kid is like, "Time to cut your wrist. Come on, Billy. Cut your wrist. We gotta summon a demon. We gotta do it, Billy. It's part of the game." It's so funny to me because it's like this just takes such a sharp turn where suddenly this kid's like worshiping the devil. Not even just like the devil, but like a nondescript demon, and he's like gonna cut his friend's hand to do it. It's just interesting to me. I guess I kind of got both sides of that growing up. I got the side that was like hardcore Dungeons and Dragons bad, but at the same time I was like playing pretend out in the field and also playing with Pokemon cards and stuff. So needless to say, I think I grew up in a bit of a strange time. I feel like I got off topic. I definitely got off topic. I was just going to say I don't know if anybody really liked cassettes. They kind of made a resurgence not too long ago, which is surprising. They're like a collector's thing now, which is cool. I mean, a lot of the times they just kind of look interesting because, you know, they just, almost because they're like an outdated piece of media. It's like VHS tapes. VHS tapes were not great. Like, for the most part, like, quality on those were awful. You get like 480p-ish maximum, and it's like kind of fuzzy and like weird colors and stuff, but it kind of adds to the quality, you know? The old analog style of media is something that's interesting to me and interesting to a lot of people because it's very hands-on, you know? I think that kind of lends to it, the fact that VHS has this low grainy kind of quality about it, and it's almost like fuzzy. It kind of, I think that's why so many people use it when they're making videos which kind of have like nostalgic undertones or which are like critiquing nostalgia, because it is something that people generally feel kind of nostalgic about. I feel like in the 2010s, we were getting a lot of 90s kids talking about how, like, The Lion King was the greatest movie ever, and how, well, Lion King might be one of the greatest movies ever, actually. That's subjective, but you get all kinds of people talking about, like, bring back Cartoon Network and, like, bring back Nickelodeon, because it had been it had officially been like 10 or 15 years, and people that were kids were now nostalgic for that, you know? And then we kind of got that wave of post-nostalgia for that, where people were critiquing it and whatnot. And that kind of happens with every generation. I mean, you get shows like 20 or 30 years after a decade is over that kind of critique shows of that decade, you know? I mean, I can think of Gilmore Girls and Malcolm in the Middle and other shows like that that kind of take those formulas established by TV and play with them. And we got the same thing with VHS tapes. We got things that were reminiscing, but also got some things that were kind of critiquing that and like what came with having VHS as a format, which I guess kind of brings us full circle to Jack Stauber and the fact that you don't really have to critique something. You don't even have to just feel nostalgic for it. You can just take elements of it and make it into your own thing, you know? Jack Stauber definitely plays upon the nostalgia, but he uses it to create something unique, you know? It almost, in a way, like the videos that he makes almost kind of feel... It reminds me of when you'd find a VHS that was kind of scary. And it would kind of haunt you, but it was also kind of intriguing in a way. And it just kind of feels like he's playing into that in a way that's very interesting. He's not really saying anything about the format at all, or really saying anything about nostalgia in most cases, but he's just kind of reminiscing about feelings in general and using this as a format that people can get into. I think that's all I really had to ramble about. I hope you guys like the actual painting. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out overall. I wasn't feeling it like the day after, but then I got to take it to work, and I opened the page to it because I was going to turn to the next page, and my friend was like, "Oh, that looks awesome." And it made me feel good, you know? It made me feel like it was worth it a little bit more. It kind of brought my spirits up. So thank you, friend. You know who you are. Anyways, that was it. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Till next time.